Hey y'all, this is Lydia. I'm going to do a collective reading for the full moon in Virgo that's happening Thursday night into Friday morning, depending on what part of the country you're in. And I'm going to use a series of decks. And I think I'm just going to pull intuitively. I'm not feeling called to have a set spread right now. And this is also sort of a commemorative reading for a project I have in the works of doing more collective readings in general on a consistent basis in a more structured fashion, which has been quite the process. Structure for me is not what you would think of as structure. It's more of a living organism that works cohesively than, let's say, blocks and bricks and things that hold into a fixed place. I'm more of a living, breathing, moving, dancing sort of structure-based person, which has been a learning experience in and of itself, but we'll see how it plays out. But for now, we're going to do a collective reading for the full moon in Virgo. It's happening at 27 degrees of Virgo, and it's going to be conjunct Jupiter and Neptune, and that's very exciting. Mercury will be nearby, also in Pisces. And this is huge spiritual upgrade energy. Virgo, being the opposing sign of Pisces, is grounding in a lot of spiritual upgrades, and it's sort of blossoming things that have been in the background, doing background work for a while now. And it's exciting energy. It can also be trippy energy, very weird, mutable energy. And, you know, depending on what house it's in, it's spiritually upgrading us and grounding in a new tier or a new octave of expression in whatever part of your chart it's happening in. That's where it's going to be expanding you. So for Virgo suns, it's the first house. And for Virgo risings, it's the first house, and wherever Virgo is in your chart. So starting out, we have consciousness. So a raising of our consciousness. The frequency of consciousness supports our ability to focus our attention on all the multidimensional aspects that show up so that we can include them in our reality. And I've also been getting, this sort of complexity coming in together and sort of integrating in together, so that we can navigate a complex structure without being overwhelmed. There's a sense of, it may feel chaotic right now, but the chaos is coming into a cohesion in a sort of natural order because, you know, nature is chaos. But there's an order to the chaos, and we're starting to sort of ground that in and integrate that in a way where we don't feel overwhelmed, but we feel sort of in sync with what's happening. And this is no small feat. This is definitely these feelings of not necessarily being able to define something, so being okay with that, and by opening up and broadening our perception and sort of seeing things through a kaleidoscope as opposed to just focusing in on one piece at a time, we're sort of seeing this beautiful dance that's happening and coming together, which is raising our awareness and raising our consciousness as a humanity, yes, and also on an individual level and how we operate in our lives. Clarifier, transition. Yeah, so we're going through this process and we're in the middle of it. And it's quite intense. We can also be feeling things sort of crumble away, things sort of loosening their grip on us. And a part of this higher consciousness is grounding in is seeing the deeper wisdom in these transitions and seeing the deeper wisdom in perhaps relationships or circumstances, you know, exiting our lives, but not mistaking that as a bad thing, but seeing the beauty in it, and also thanking the situations, the circumstances, the relationships that are leaving for how they served us up until this point and how they've gotten us through to be who we are right now. The frequency of transition supports our deep understanding of the ever-changing nature of existence in our lives, so that we can learn to let go, surrender to the process, and allow transition to occur with ease and grace. And this has been coming up in the gene keys too, this idea of compassion and grace for the changes we're going through and these transitions we're going through. And to feel them deeply, don't get me wrong, this isn't about, good vibes only. This is about feeling things and accepting them and allowing them to be, so that we can transition in grace and ease, and to really thank whatever's happening in our lives for what it's serving and how it's serving us to get us to, this higher consciousness, which is freedom. I'm getting freedom as well. And being free as a mindset and as a way of being, and not necessarily viewing our circumstances as a trap, but also transitioning into this idea that our circumstances are serving us and that they're actually no matter what's happening in our lives, it's always serving us. And that being this idea of freedom in our perception and the way we view our circumstances changing, that breaks us into freedom. So I have the Emperor, the Daughter of Swords, and these two came out together, the Hermit and the Eight of Cups. The Emperor is structure. The Daughter of Swords is this unique insight, this way of seeing that perhaps is very unique, and perhaps it's something new that's grounding in for us that we aren't necessarily, have mastered yet. But there's this idea of a new sort of structure of how we see things and how we view things. And this is leading to, again, this consciousness that's rising, that's taking us away from old stagnant pools, taking us away a very limited, perhaps even tunnel vision way of viewing things, and breaking us into a higher perspective, a higher light. And it's in process, it's in transition. There's this sense on these cards that we're figuring it out and we're in the process of grounding it in, but it's not quite there yet. And another part of this higher consciousness too is being okay that we are in process, that perhaps life is a process. And this idea of arriving and this idea of the journey being over happens when we die. And it's not necessarily, destinations in this life. It's all part of this grander process, this grander arc. And this idea of getting somewhere and that being the end all be all is not necessarily how life works. When we view something as attainable and we attain it, there can be this sense of dissatisfaction once we attain it because it's what's next. There's this idea of always being in process and always growing and always evolving, and that we can have these smaller goals, but they are really building blocks to something much bigger, which is life, the grand arc of our lives. And we have the owl, the octopus, and the stingray. So we have wisdom, boundaries, and building confidence. And confidence has been coming up a lot lately in the energies, and this idea of being in our confidence and really embodying our confidence and not necessarily allowing discomfort or doubt or imposter syndrome to stop us in our tracks. And this, can bring up codependency issues, this need to be accepted, this need to be encouraged and cheered on by people around us as a way to verify that we're on the right track. The octopus asks us to have boundaries around that, to have boundaries around where we're codependent and also perhaps where we have loose boundaries with ourselves, and really strengthening that relationship with ourselves. And the owl brings a boon. The owl is a gift to help us along, and perhaps the gift is showing us where we can put up better boundaries so that we can be more confident, be more in our strength, right? This idea of building a spine so that we're not so codependent on our outside reality, but we're sovereign within ourselves and don't need, these outside indicators to let us know we're on the right track, because in our hearts we know we're on the right track. And just an underlying is you got the love, Hadarian energy, codependency, boundaries. And in general too, I've also been getting this message of protecting this transition we're in and really protecting this shift in consciousness and not allowing perhaps rejection or people around us and their perspectives to take us out of this transition in our own consciousness that's happening. And to really open up to seeing things from our own sovereignty and our own true nature versus, perhaps the perspective of our friends. If what we're seeing is counter to that, not allowing that to stop us in our tracks, but protecting this transition we're in. So this new moon in Virgo, let's just do one card for that. Weight of the world, boundaries. Let it go. It's not yours to carry. So, okay. So the divine is really stressing this need for boundaries right now, and this need to let go of our codependencies and to really step into our sovereignty, because we're all a unique expression, and these Aquarian energies we're in with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction cycle in Aquarius that we're in, this is about really acknowledging our unique expression and how that contributes to the whole, and not necessarily saying, okay, I'm above anyone else, and not necessarily saying we're all the same, but really acknowledging that each individual on this planet, the 7 or 8 billion of us, is each a unique light and a unique expression that is part of a cohesive whole. That's very important. There's no one soul on this planet right now that's not important, that's less than anyone else. And what we're being called to really acknowledge and to really step into is the strength and the power and the impact that our unique expression has when it comes to impacting the whole. And really also taking responsibility for our consciousness and how we view the world and how we view our interactions and how we view our circumstances and others. Really taking responsibility for how that creates an impact and a sort of vibration that spreads into the collective and spreads into the collective consciousness, and also impacts our relationships and our one-on-one interactions, and what we bring to our interactions really does contribute. It really has, it plays a part in something bigger. And this transition we're in, there's going to be energies that try to keep us from that. There's going to be energies that pull us back. There's going to be people and situations in our lives that's going to be easy to mistake as a reason to put the veil back over our eyes, or to turn away, or to say, okay, well, this is too painful. It's too painful, or too weird, or too, I don't know, alienating, where perhaps we're afraid of being isolated. We're afraid of loss in this time. And Ceres is with Black Moon Lilith in Gemini. So, perhaps fearful thoughts that we'll be abandoned or whatnot. And again, we're being asked to have boundaries around that and to really protect our transition right now, and to be honest about where we're codependent. And Virgo is a big one for that. Virgo is a reality check. Virgo, is probably one of those number one energies that'll say, I'm not living like that anymore, and will put the foot down and create the boundary when it feels like, it can't take something anymore. And the divine is also putting us in those circumstances where, okay, enough is enough. If I don't do something about it, I'm just going to be miserable in perpetuity. So it's also this energy with the full moon, which is a destruction energy, which is breaking down things so new things can blossom. This energy is coming in so that we can put those boundaries up, and perhaps even have these energies that are happening, or these circumstances that were happening, bust us out into new energy, and sort of creating this fuel for us to get started on something, or to move forward in a new journey, a new transition, based on how we view the world, how we view ourselves, our consciousness, how we navigate, and how we see ourselves as a unique expression of something bigger. So I hope this message resonates. I'm sending love and wishing you well. Bye.